Prevenient Grace. What is prevenient grace? Prevenient grace is the grace that lets us know that something is wrong before we are fully aware of what is wrong. Prevenient grace is the grace that opens our eyes to the fact that often what we accept for our lives is not what God wants for our lives. Prevenient grace is the grace that allows us to know that God is reaching out to rescue us from what is wrong before we realize we need to be saved. And interestingly, prevenient grace is present in so many different places and takes shape in so many different ways. Prevenient grace can take the form of human consciousness, loving relationships, community, words of support and encouragement, feelings of guilt and shame. Prevenient grace can take the form in the quest for meaning and purpose, the search for love and natural order, and of course, in the sacraments. All these shapes and forms of prevenient grace are ways by which God, seeking love, surrounds all people, protecting and preserving and pointing the way to the fullness of life. That was always God's intention for humanity, for you and for me. Prevenient grace describes the truth that God seeks us long before our seeking begins. Whatever moves we make towards God, God has made the first move. This is where our salvation begins. It begins with the God who has come looking for us. Now, why do we need God to search for us first? Why does our salvation begin with the gift of prevenient grace, which seeks us out, instead of with us turning to God first and saying, God, please save me? And the answer is very simple. Salvation begins with God because the truth is, if it was not for God, we wouldn't even know that we need to be saved. Over the next few weeks, I want us to work with a specific metaphor for us to try and understand the specific nature of each component of grace. This metaphor was developed together by those who were part of my theology hour classes last year. And so my huge appreciation to those two groups for helping me develop a better understanding of God's grace. The metaphor that we developed together is this. Imagine a person is born into a deep, dark pit. This is the only world and existence which they know. They know nothing else. They don't know they need to be saved from the pit. For them, darkness is normal. For them, being covered in mud and dirt is just how things are. Their eyes have grown accustomed to the dim light. Their lungs are used to breathing in stale air. They know nothing else because they have been conditioned to only focus on the walls and floors of the pit. And then they hear it. A voice that calls out to them from above, a voice that gives them the first inclination they have ever had in their life to look up. The voice of prevenient grace. As they look up for the first time, they get a glimpse of a world that exists outside of the pit. Some blue sky, some sunlight, maybe a breeze blowing through a tree branch. That way of life is still way out of their reach. And up until they heard God's voice calling, they did not even know it existed. But now, not only do they realize that how they are living is not how things are meant to be, now there is also a feeling within them that maybe they should get out of the pit. They don't know what this other world looks like. They don't know what life might be like outside of the pit. But they wonder deep down if it is better than where they will find themselves now. Is it better than what they have always taken as normal? Since hearing the voice, they wonder if it is possible to get out of the pit. And as they look up again, drawn by the voice that is calling them, a voice that has come looking for them in the pit, they then see the hand of salvation being offered. God's hand is reaching out to them in the pit. Take my hand, I will pull you out of the pit, he says. This is prevenient grace. This is why we need prevenient grace. We need God to first come looking for us because we didn't even know we were lost, are lost. Prevenient grace is really just God's love, which has driven him to come looking for us long before we even think about God or comprehend God or realize we are living in a pit. However, prevenient grace can only make us aware we are in the pit. It can only open our eyes to the fact that God's hand of salvation is on offer. We still need to make the choice to take that step in faith and grab the hand and allow God to pull us out of the pit. So in which pit do you find yourself living in? In which areas of your life have you heard the prevenient voice of God speak and now you know all is not well? Where do you see God's hand of salvation reaching out to you? Will you embrace his loving grip and allow yourself to be pulled out? Or will you opt to stay? Because even though you now know this is not how it should be, it is still all you have ever known, and you are too used to the pit to be willing to leave it. May you hear God's voice of prevenient grace speaking into your life, but may you also have the courageous faith to take hold of his hand of salvation so as to discover a new way of living life. God's prevenient grace is seeking you right now as we start a new year. He's seeking you so as to pull you out of your old pits and to bring you into his light. This is the start of salvation. This is prevenient grace.